And that's what I like about the book is you give the example of Anita and when calculators were first introduced, that they cost a lot of money at the time, and now well, they're cheaper now in relative terms. Can you just speak to that, like Anita, and how accountants thought they were going to be doing on a business, but actually it's quite the opposite what happens in the accountancy sector.
Yeah, so we talked about how accountants, when the calculator was invented, because, that was the profession was regarded as, the kind of bean counter role, where it was a very administrative, type of function that was being performed. And so once the calculator came in, there was a lot of assumption out there that that would effectively replace the job. Instead, what happened was the role of the accountant became elevated to financial advisor, financial analyst. It was much more the higher value kind of, you know, role that they were performing. And therefore, what we've seen over the years is that actually the chief financial officer has become, in many ways, the most important role in the company, maybe outside of the CEO. And most of, certainly in the United States, the kind of most common through line to becoming a CEO comes through the finance field in a way that just simply wasn't the case 30 or 40 years ago. And I think the really interesting comparison with that and how it's relevant to the shorter work week, let's think about knowledge workers. So I'm a knowledge worker because I get paid based on the perceived value of the information that I hold, the expertise that I have, the experience that I have. Um, you know, you're probably the same yourself, William, hosting a podcast. There's so many people right now who, you could classify as a knowledge worker. And the fear, I think, that's out there with AI is that rightly people assume that the value of knowledge is going to diminish because the price of entry is going to become so much cheaper. Access to information, expertise is going to be, you know, already is so accessible in a way that has never been the case before. My view, similar to the accountant, isn't that that's going to make the role of the knowledge worker redundant. It's that it's going to actually move the value up and down the value chain. So if you think about knowledge, what comes before knowledge? What comes before knowledge is the ability to actually ask the right questions, curiosity. So in a world of infinite information, the ability to actually ask the right questions becomes more valuable. What comes after knowledge? Curation, being able to package information and insights in a world where you've got overload in a very effective way becomes more valuable. Think about a wine sommelier. Why does that job still exist when access to wine information is so cheap? It's because they curate the knowledge in a way that adds value. And then lastly, judgment. So being able to make good decisions and good judgments based on that information. Now, so I say all of these things. The point that I want to make is this. If you think about productivity as being a kind of a two-way street between you have the efficiency parts of the job, which is all about the speed and volume of tasks and processes. And then over here, you have the effectiveness parts of the job. This is creativity. This is critical thinking, judgment, connection, relationships, adaptability, all of those very human parts of the job. Well, what's AI going to do? It's going to mean that most of the efficiency parts of people's jobs over time are going to get outsourced to AI. What that's going to mean is the value is going to move across to effectiveness. Our most human skills are going to be much more important. They're going to be the critical skills of the future. Are those going to be maximized by people burning the candle at both ends, by people sleeping under the desk like Elon Musk? Are people going to be more creative? Are they going to think clearer? Are they going to make better judgments? Of course they're not. And so to me, that's my hope. That's why I'm ambitious and hopeful about the impact of AI in the workplace. I think it's going to force leaders and managers to think more about how are we managing people's motivation, energy, recovery, well-being, much more so than thinking about, how many hours are they putting in on the clock? Because, racing against the machine on the speed and volume of tasks and processes is going to be a complete and utter dead end for most people and for most organizations.